Good morning, everybody, and welcome to 2020. It's great to have you with us for our first webinar for 2020, and got some interesting insight for you, hopefully, focusing primarily on insight and a few other bits and pieces as well. So just to revisit our agenda for today, we've got the following covered for you. So we'll start with some campaign performance and analysis, looking to understand how insight can help you uncover some nuggets of gold, hopefully. We'll then look at a few different apps that you might not have considered that could be ways to help both yourself and potentially also the sales team in getting more out of Eloqua and accessing some of that digital body language that's available. In addition to that, we'll look at a few time-saving techniques and ideas, a few different campaign ideas, and then see if we've got some time to actually look in Eloqua and show you a few other bits and pieces. We also have some great news in relation to the 20A release, which is due in February. I think it's around Valentine's Day almost, in the middle of February this year. So we'll show you some of those and hopefully you'll love them as well. But on the line today, my name is Derek Bell. I'm the Director of Customer Success and Marketing at Marketing Cube. And my colleague Jason O'Donnell is on the line as well. So please feel free to use the chat function as we go throughout the morning or the afternoon, depending on where you are. And Jason can help answer some of those questions or bring those to my attention, and perhaps we can share some of those with the rest of the team. But the first thing we wanted to do, as we try to do each month, depending on questions that have been submitted, is answer some of those questions. So let me jump into the first one. First one is from Erica in Adelaide in South Australia. And Erica, bless her, she did email me about an hour ago saying unfortunately she had to jump off to another meeting, but I think her question is still valid to share with everybody. So you can read her question there. Essentially what she's trying to do is look at ways to deliver registration information, also in relation to RSVP. So it's one thing to ask people to register. That's very simple. If they're not going to attend, well, they just simply won't register. However, if you do invite people to RSVP, the implication there is that even if they're not coming, you're asking them to tell you that they're not coming. And so that requires a different level of form processing steps. And potentially the easiest way to do it is with shared lists as well. So I don't have time to go into detail to answer this, but I think one of the easiest suggestions is to look at form submission data. Now, keeping in mind form submission data is not unique. That's the first thing to understand. So if somebody does submit the form multiple times, they will appear every single time in the form submission report. The upside of the report, though, is that it does show you the date and time that the person submitted that particular information. Now, something that you may or may not be aware of is that you can actually exclude some people from those reports. So let me just jump in and show you what I mean by that. So this is actually the registration form for the user group that you've attended today. If you have a look at the view submission data from the actions menu in the top right-hand corner, you will see all of the people who have submitted that particular form. Now, the key thing, one of the questions that Erica had was removing test information. So if we look down the bottom here, you can see that when we first launched this particular form for the user group, I did the testing first, then I would have got Jason to help me. Matt's had a look as well, and then Jason's had another look. Now, in reality, that's great, but it's all test data. So what I can do is if I hold down the shift key on my keyboard, you can see it highlights the whole lot in blue. If you then do a right click, you can say exclude from reporting. So I say exclude, and now they're gone. So now when I start to look at data from Insight, specifically the form submission data report, it will exclude those particular contacts that I've just deleted from the list. So that's one way you can jump in and actually have a closer look at the data and be more confident with what you're looking at, that it's not just test data mixed up with your regular data. So first tip, hopefully that helps answer some of Erica's questions. Okay. So the next question was from Samantha in Sydney. So Samantha wants to know how she can build a custom dashboard and report that isn't currently existing. So we'll be covering the second part of that request today in relation to building a custom report, and I'll show you how to do that. The question that she does say, though, that isn't currently existing. So my experience is that it takes longer and is a more complex process to go into Insight and try and build a custom report from scratch. The more effective way to approach your report building with Insight is to go into Insight and find a report that almost gives you the information that you need. That's typically a much better place to start. It's much faster for you to get to an end result, and it's easier to do. And that's what we're going to do today. We'll show you how to do that. Now, in relation to building a custom dashboard in Insight, so just to clarify, we're talking about Insight dashboards and not the dashboards that you find within Eloqua, just to clarify that. Okay, so building a custom dashboard in Eloqua. It's outside of my remit. I honestly have never done it and probably don't have any intention to do it. But my suggestion to you, Samantha, is to contact the Marketing Cube support team. They can certainly assist you. But the thing that I would encourage you to do before you contact them is I often tell people just to grab a piece of A3 paper, just grab a big sheet of paper and literally start to draw out what it is that you would like to see on that particular dashboard. Now, you may prefer to do that in PowerPoint or make it a little bit more organized. We don't really mind, as long as you're able to lay out some sort of an indication of what it is that you'd like to see. There are many ways that you can use the Insight dashboards to render data with different graphs and tables, etc. Pie charts, bar charts, all sorts of different things. So what the guys can do then is understand your data, understand how you want to have that visualized, and then help you go through the process of building that. So that would be my answer to that question. Now, the next question comes from Auckland, New Zealand. And here we have a question. So the question, I honestly was trying to find some instance where there was a bug impacting email analysis, and I'm not particularly sure where that was. But the general issue I find when people start to look in Insight or dashboards, etc., and feel like there's errors or inconsistencies, my general experience is that it comes down to not completely understanding what the report is actually showing you. So as a simple note, so for instance, in a moment, we're going to look at the campaign analysis overview report, and I will set a time frame for the 1st of January 2019 and through until 31st of December 2019 to get that full 12-month period. Now, when I go through that process, what I'm going to see in that report at the campaign level is campaigns that ran in 2016, 2017, 2018. And when you initially look at that, you're like, well, hang on a minute. I specifically said January 1st, 2019 until 31st of December 2019. So why am I seeing campaigns from the previous years? Now, the answer to that question is, when you pull that report, what you're actually asking and what Eloqua is delivering to you from a reporting point of view is any activity by contacts within that time frame. So if somebody has touched on a campaign that is 2 years old or 18 months old or 6 months old, but outside of the date range that you provided, their activity is recorded within the time frame that it took place. So in that case, that's why sometimes you'll see data that you think doesn't make any sense, but it does make sense because what we're focusing on from a reporting point of view is activity of the person within the time frame that you've requested. So in relation to answering that question, that's kind of the best response I can give. I'm trying to think, did I type one? No, I didn't. I didn't type a response for that one. So that would be my suggestion for that one. If you do have specific issues or questions in a bit more detail, the other point that was made, sorry if I just go back for a second, the other point that was made here was the impression that somebody had, read the email, but they were never sent the email. Okay, that one happens quite a bit. So there can be loads of reasons for that. The simple reason is potentially I received the email, but I forwarded on to somebody, and that person has your cookies sitting on their device. Therefore, Eloqua records that as campaign activity. So Eloqua may never have sent them the email, but they certainly received the email because somebody else has forwarded it to them. Now, again, you may show them as inactive in your system, but are they in fact inactive in the system where their email resides? So we had a situation a couple of months ago where we're tearing our hair out, which for me is a bit of a disaster, but tearing our hair out, trying to figure something out. And what we worked out was that the IT team hadn't actually terminated the email account of the particular person in question. What they'd done is forwarded that email account. So all inbound email to that account went to a colleague. So again, same scenario where the person who had opened and engaged with the email was never sent the email. That's because the IT team within the respective organization had actually forwarded all of the emails from that inbox to a colleague. So there can be a range of reasons as to why things can appear potentially not to be accurate, but there's no magic. Eloqua doesn't just sort of randomly decide to tell you someone's opened an email if they've not opened it. There has to be some sort of a trigger at a digital level in order to show that information and to have that appear in a report. So I find sometimes it takes hours sometimes in order to do that analysis and that forensic activity. And then at the end of it, I sometimes wonder what was the point. But yeah, so I'll leave that with you. If there's additional questions though that you do have in relation to that specific question, please contact the support team and we can potentially go through that process for you. Thank you. All right, next one. So campaign performance, this is what this user group really is all about today. I was hoping that you might feel like this picture when you pull your reports, but let's have a closer look and get a bit of an idea of what's available. So I think the first thing is to understand the data model that makes up Insight and what is Insight and what is available that you can actually report on. So as I said here, there are over 200 default reports available to you. And that comes back to my comment earlier that sometimes it's better to find a report that has almost everything in it that you need, but potentially you need to do some adjustments. So you've got 200 plus of those to play with, and they vary across these 6 objects, as we would call them. So campaigns, emails, landing pages, forms, contacts, website. Website will also contain detail about landing pages as well. But as long as you've got the Eloqua tracking code sitting on your CMS or your website, then you'll also see that. Now, I would suggest to you that the website reporting available in Eloqua is by no means a replacement for Google Analytics. GA has a whole suite of reporting functions, which I'm sure you're very familiar with. But sometimes in the context of the people that you're wanting to look at from a reporting point of view, that's where Eloqua can come into it. So GA can't tell you who did what or who clicked on this or who did something, whereas you can absolutely get that information by drilling down through Insight and also using segmentation as well. So that's sort of the main reason why you would probably lean towards using the website reports available at Insight. Again, it's not a binary game. You don't use Insight or use GA. You absolutely use both, but they just deliver slightly different information for you, which can be quite helpful. So once we understand Insight, the challenge then becomes, well, what about if I want to do some cross-object reporting? What if I want to have a look at campaign information and emails in the same sort of report? Okay, so the answer to that is a dashboard. So it's very similar in the CRM world. If you're looking at Salesforce or Oracle Sales Cloud or NetSuite, etc., typically you can do very quick reporting at the object level. So all of your contacts, all of your leads, all of your campaigns, accounts, etc. You can create lists, for example, in most of those platforms or CRM platforms. But once you decide that you want to mix contact information with lead information and with account information, that's then where you typically need to bring data together and then present that more visually on a dashboard. So it's no different with Eloqua. So you can see that the relationships, as well as little gray lines, are meant to show you in the back end there that they can all be connected, but it would be using a dashboard that would help you achieve that. Now, if you're relatively new to Eloqua, when Oracle made the change to the new Insight platform, which is built on the Oracle Business Intelligence Enterprise Edition. I always have to remember what the acronym stands for. Then we built this little page on our website, and this page basically is meant to be a little bit of a cheat sheet, and there's a little bit of a consolidation from a few different places. So there's information from topliners, and you can access information directly from here. What we do is explain the two types of users, so your reporter and analyzer user, what that means, looking at different access to resources there, help center, topliners. There's also 6 videos, which I'd really encourage you to have a look at. Those 6 videos are quite short. I think they go for a maximum of 6 minutes. Then if you're a bit more geeky, those 3 buttons would be helpful. And there's also additional training and other resources available as well. So you'll find that information on our website. It's not in any of the navigation though, so you have to remember the URL, but it's pretty simple. It's just simply marketingcube.com.au/insight. I figured that was reasonably easy to remember. Okay, so in order to help you review 2019, which was the premise of what we wanted to try and get across for you today, the campaign analysis overview report, which is probably one of the most common reports that people will pull from Insight, is a great place to start. Just so you're aware, there is a campaign analysis overview report, but you'll also find email analysis overview reports, landing page analysis, form analysis, I think, overview report as well. There's a few of those, and they're helpful because they help you jump in at a high level and get a better understanding of kind of what's going on. So the report contains a lot of metrics, it contains unique metrics, and they're the ones that I would encourage you to focus on. The other thing that I would encourage you to think about when you start to use Insight in more detail is to be consistent in the reports that you extract. So you will find differences if you start jumping around from this report to that report to this report and compare and all sorts of different things. You may find some what you feel are discrepancies between those, but I'd encourage you to go back to the Help Center and read in detail what it is the report is actually showing you. Okay, it's very easy to look at it and go, oh no, that's wrong. Well, generally it's right. Our understanding needs some help. So use the Help Center to help you get clarity around what it is you're actually looking at. I find typically with this particular report, I find it much easier to shape it, build it, get it to the state that I want it in, and then get it out into Excel so I can start to manipulate it. And I'll show you how to do that today. It's always good to remove testing campaigns, and I find that's just easier to do once you get it into Excel. It's also easier if your naming convention supports that as well. You know your data better than anybody, so you should be able to look at that hopefully and start to extract information. Remember too, you can also pull these reports for yourself. So let's say, if you're in a smaller company, let's say like Marketing Cube, well, we typically would just extract a report of all campaigns. However, if you're in a larger team, say a geographically dispersed team, you might find it easier to pull the report based on you as a user, or potentially you and 2 or 3 of your colleagues. Maybe you're based here in Australia and you just want the Australian campaign data. You're not looking for New Zealand or Singapore, Malaysia or India, etc. You're just after Australia. And so you can put filters on the reports to get that result as well. Now, the other thing to point out is that this process is enhanced if you have the campaign fields configured. So if you make these required, so product, region, and campaign type, if you have those 3 campaign fields required at the campaign canvas level, that gives you even more information to be able to filter and play with, and also has a benefit to dashboards as well. So good to know. So basically, Insight reports are built up of 2 constructs, being metrics and attributes. So reports are built using the combination of the 2. Attributes are characteristics of your data, while metrics are qualitative measures of the attributes. What the heck does that mean, right? So the attribute provides context to the metric in the report. For example, city is an attribute and the total clicks is the metric. And when combined in a report, city is a row and total clicks is a column. Thus, you can learn about the clicks by city. Attributes and metrics can then be combined into a subject area, which you might then turn into a dashboard. Okay, so good to understand the 2 and what they mean. So what does that look like? Once you get into Insight, it looks a little bit like this. And this is the particular report that's highlighted that we're going to look at today, which is the campaign analysis overview report. And you can see there's a whole range of others available there as well. But let's jump in and have a little look. And I'm going to make sure I have a close look on the chat function as well, Jason, just as if people want to have a closer look. Okay, let's jump in. All right, so how do I get there? Probably is the first thing I should show. So we're in Eloqua. Let me just get a bit more screen real estate here for you. And we might just zoom in a little bit to make it a bit easier. Also, just a little bit of a shout out. We have a couple of new customers joining us today for the first time. So good to have you with us, guys. And please make sure you use the chat function if you do have any questions. Jason's sitting there ready to go. All right, so once we arrive at the home screen of Eloqua, or My Eloqua as it's called, you'll find the reporting menu in the top right-hand corner of the screen, and you can go to dashboards, which is the standard dashboards built into Eloqua, or we can leave Eloqua and go off to Insight. And Insight is the Oracle Business Intelligence platform, and that's where we are right now. So first thing I wanted to do was to head straight into campaigns. So if I click on campaigns in the bottom left-hand corner from the report catalog, you'll then see the screen that I showed you just a moment ago when we were looking at the presentation. So once I get in here, you can see mine's actually, I've got mine flagged as a favorite. I can click on open. And for those that are a little bit more observant than others, you'll notice I'm in Firefox as I'm playing with Insight, and this is the best experience and the easier experience is my suggestion to you. Chrome is just a little bit of annoying sometimes, and I'll explain here exactly why. So the first step is to select a campaign active date, or in this case, what we actually want to do is leave it as blank, because we want to focus on looking at all of our campaign performance for 2019. So I'm actually going to put in a date range. So it does give you an example here, and you'll see that it's US format. And so it's the 1st of January, January the 1st, 2019. And my end date would be December 31, 2019. Now, you do have the option here to select specific campaigns. It's much easier, instead of scrolling through like this, it's much easier to click on the view search option there at the bottom, and this window will pop up. So now what you can do is using the different filters here, if you wanted to. So in my world, I would probably do something like starts with 2019, and off it goes. It'll just pull those campaigns through. Now that could be one way to go if you're looking just purely at your campaign performance. The default will be for Eloqua to deliver any campaign activity that's happened within the date range. That was the point that I made earlier. So I typically don't go through this process, but just to let you know that there are options there available to how you might want to do that. Once you've got them highlighted, which you can do like so, you can click on the double arrow and that brings everything across, versus if I move them all back, if I click on one in the middle, it just brings one of them across. So you can be selective if you wanted to, for whatever reason, like so. But I'm going to cancel that because I just wanted to bring through everything in that date range. Now, just earlier, I mentioned to you the idea of searching by users. So what you can do here is find your relevant users. So in our world, it would probably be myself, and it would be Matt. Sorry, Matt, there you are. And so we would just use myself and Matt because we're the only two that really launch campaigns within the platform. But again, I don't need to worry about that because I just want to have everything come through. So then I'm going to click on OK. Now, the other reason I suggest Firefox in place of Chrome is that date range where I put in the date, etc. I find, at least on the version of Chrome that I'm using, which is the more current version of Chrome, Chrome is not happy when it requires you to put in the time as well. You might have noticed it had the date and then it had, I think, hours, minutes and seconds, etc. And with Firefox, it's a bit smarter. You don't have to worry about doing that. You just simply put in the date format as per the description and everything's happy. All right, so here we have loads of data and information with all the various campaigns and what's been going on in those campaigns. Now, there are a few things that you can do here at this point. You can just simply go straight to export at the bottom of the screen. You'll see if you click on export, you can then say export to Excel. And so off it goes. And depending if you're on a Mac or PC, this experience may differ, etc. And you can open that like so. Then the other thing that you may want to do is start to edit that particular campaign. No, I really don't want to help you, Microsoft. There we go. So let's have a look at that, because sometimes you think, well, there are different columns here I want. Some of these columns I don't want. I'm not really interested in totals. I'm more interested in unique values, those sorts of things. So you may want to look at adjusting the report and the columns that are sitting in front of you. So in order to do that, you need to have, let me go back to this screen for 1 second. You need to have an analyzer license. Now, that analyzer license is free. There's no cost for that, but your administrator needs to assign you an analyzer license so that you can do what I'm about to show you. So let's jump back in there. Now, the key way to understand if you do or don't have an analyzer license assigned to your user profile is whether or not you see the edit button here in the bottom left-hand corner of the screen. If you see the edit button, you have an analyzer license assigned to your profile. If you don't, then you just need to have a quick chat with your administrator to make that happen. Okay, so now what you can see in front of you are a whole bunch of column headings that are kind of grouped into different areas. And these are the column headings of the Excel report that has been spat out. So let me just show you that. Now it always comes out looking very small. So let me just increase that a bit for you. Like so. And so what you may want to do is have a play with that and have it make a little bit more sense in the context of what you're doing and the information that you want to share with people within the business. So easy done. Notice over here, we have 2 folders called attributes and metrics. Remember, we talked about that on the slide deck in relation to that information. So we can open those up and we start to have a look at the information that is available. So keeping in mind, we're looking at campaign data here. And so you might have things like, for instance, we have the campaign name, the campaign start date. I wonder about having the campaign end date. That will probably make sense. So you can click on the little search icon here. And if you just type in end, and there we go, we've got campaign end date. So then I can literally just drag that in. And so now I have another column, campaign start date and campaign end date, like so. And then you can just keep going. You'll see that we have some custom fields in there as well. So Ready Talk attended. That's obviously not an Eloqua field. Ready Talk, just if you're not aware, is a webinar product. We use Zoom today. We don't use Ready Talk anymore, but you can see that data is still sitting there and is available. So then we can look at more metrics. If you're wanting to play around with metrics, you can adjust these columns a little bit too if they're looking a bit too cramped for you. So you've got unique responses, total responses, any new contacts, new leads, etc. Now, the first thing you want to do is obviously make sure that you're not adding something that's already there, because that just gets a bit confusing for everybody. And you'll notice that these are in sections as well. So you can actually pick those up and move them around. Okay, so you can play around and do what you need to do. If you want to get rid of something, you can just click on the little cog and say delete. So we can get rid of that, just focus on unique visitors and unique page views, etc. Average landing page time, all that sort of stuff. Now, once you've made changes here, at this point, you can then use the tabs across the top here to help you understand what that's going to look like. So if I click on results, what it's actually going to do now is build the report based on the changes that I've made. Now, while it's doing that, I'm just going to get my other Excel file. All right. So you can see there, we've got the campaign end date. It's popped it down the end for some reason, but anyway, we'll fix that. So you can see, you can get a glance. You don't have to actually export it out to Excel in order to see those necessary changes. So you can see the information that you've added and the changes that you've made and the sequencing, etc., columns and so on and so forth. Then the last tab is referred to as prompts. I typically don't change this particular one. But essentially what we're doing now is we're building a custom report. So it goes along the lines of that earlier comment that I made, which was to find a report that has almost all of the information that you need, but then coming in here, clicking on edit, and then we can start to adjust and modify the report to give us the information that we want. Okay, so you can see these different prompts that are available here. So if you wanted to remove the ability for people to be able to sort by user, well, you could do that if you wanted to. Typically find no value in doing that, so I would leave that as is. Now, the last step and the most important step, and again, you have to have your analyzer profile in order to do this, is to click on these little icons right here. The first one on the left is to save, and the second one is to save as. And save as is the important one, because Eloqua won't, or Insight won't let you save over a master report. So all those 200 plus reports that are available out of the box, you can't manipulate those. You can extract those reports and all that sort of fun stuff, but you can't actually change the master report, and you'll just get an error message when you try to do that. So you must always click on save as and then identify where you want to pop it. And you can usually pop it in maybe your company shared folder. Maybe I'll pop it here in campaign overview, etc. And then just so I know what I'm doing, so I don't end up with too many reports, I'll just pop test at the end. You can drop a little description in here as well, which can be good for other users. So if the report is made available to other users, they can understand what it is that you've done with that particular report that makes it a little bit different. But essentially, that's what you're doing. So you're looking, first of all, for a report that essentially delivers almost everything that you need. Find that report, then click on the edit button in the bottom left-hand corner. And remember, if you don't see that edit button, it simply means you have to have the analyzer license assigned to your profile. Okay. So now that we've got the information sitting in Excel, I just wanted to share with you some of the tips that I would go through to make this happen. Now, you can't see a lot of that data, but it doesn't really matter. The first thing, and this is an Excel trick more than it is anything else, at the very bottom of the page, you've got the totals. And what you want to do is just add a row above those totals so that when you add a filter, which would be the next logical step, when you add a filter using Excel, you don't want changes in that filter arrangement to drag up the totals at the bottom of the page. So that way we can leave those like that. And then I can make changes here, for instance, sort by ascending, etc. However, when I get down to the bottom of the page, it hasn't sorted my totals column. Totals column is separate, which is helpful. Okay, just gonna have a quick look at the chat function just to see if there's any questions popping in there. No, nothing at this stage. All right. Okay, so what I would typically do now is I go through some analysis trying to work out, what really worked well in the last 12 months is focus on the unique values. And so there are a few ways that I find this helpful to do. For instance, if we look at unique click-through rate, and I can see if I scroll down to the bottom, my average was 2.08. So then what I would do is find everything above 2.08 and highlight that in green. So that tells me that it's above average. You can use conditional formatting, I'm sure, too, if you're a real Excel geek, etc. I just find this is just as easy. And so now when I start to manipulate and do sorting in different directions, I can look across the various metrics of the report and understand what's above and below average. And I suppose average is a great place to start, but we always want to be better than average, right? So other things that are typically of interest are things around campaign size as well. So you've got the ability to look at campaign members. So let me just make that a little bit bigger so you can see some of that information. Once you do this a few times and you start to understand exactly what it is you're wanting to see, then this potentially could be a process that you go through to build a dashboard. That if you build a dashboard, which would then save you the time of doing this level of analysis. Okay, so campaign members. This one gives you a, gives you a total at the bottom, but in order to follow that same logic that I was just talking to you about, I'm actually wanting to do averages. So I'm just going to use Excel, just highlight that information, then use Excel to give me the average. It's 203. So again, I just come up here and there we are. And so that becomes my above average versus my below average. Now, when you get into the bottom of this particular report, you'll notice too, though, that you'll probably see quite a bit of information that is from testing campaigns, and they're the most logical ones when you start to see campaign members 1-1. So I look at that, I'm going, actually, that one is accurate. That looks like it was a test. That was also a test. Some of the training emails that we send out to people once we do training, so they are some of those smaller groups, that's fine. Yeah, so it's about looking then at the name of your campaign, and that's when the more you can provide in the detail or have a solid naming convention, it does make that process a little bit easier for you to understand what it is you're actually looking at. And so as you go through that process, you then might think, well, do I need some information? Can I delete some? Is it not necessary? And so what I typically end up with is these columns, many of these columns color-coded with green and red, above and below average, etc. And then trying to find out where the winners are. And so, and then it depends what your metric is for a winner, right? So is click-through rate, is a really high click-through rate, is that from your point of view what the winner is essentially? So if that's the case, you might look at something. Let's have a look at this one here. This one looks interesting. So, well, it's confirmation emails. So of course people are going to open that one. So different categorizations that you can apply. Now, if when you export the data, if we just go back into Excel for a moment, so back into Eloqua for a moment, back to the criteria. We talked a little bit about the campaign reports in relation to campaign product, region, and type, which are those three right there. Now, if you're not familiar with those and they're not required when you're launching a campaign, I'd encourage you to have a little think about that, because it does make reporting a lot richer, and it certainly makes the dashboards within Eloqua a lot richer as well. Let's have a look at both of those so you can see the difference. So you can see here in our instance of Eloqua, whenever we launch a campaign, we have these three required fields. First one being product, focusing obviously on products, region for us, different regions we work in, and then the various campaign types. So if we jump into the dashboards within Eloqua, and here's one I prepared earlier. So this is the 1st of January 2019 to December 31, 2019. And you can see that these have been configured. Now, if these weren't configured and you pulled this particular report, all you're going to see is one big solid bar sitting in this area that says uncategorized. Now, if it says uncategorized, it really renders, I would argue, these dashboards pretty useless. Certainly the campaign dashboard pretty useless, because there's no degree of, there's nothing you can break down to have a look at. Whereas here, what I'm able to do is remove, say, some of the non-marketing type stuff. So get rid of the administration, no demos, probably don't need business partner updates. Sort of joint campaigns for the moment. etc. So now it's started to break down, and I'm getting a lot more information and richer information based on probably my more lead gen type of campaigns that we're doing. And so you can see also, as you start to hover over these, you start to get a breakdown. Again, if you don't have the campaign fields configured, then again, you're not going to get this level of granularity. And then at the bottom of the page, we can see all of the campaigns that make up the data that's producing those dashboards above, like so. So regardless of how you get there, whether you get there from the dashboards here within Eloqua, or if you choose to go into Insight and extract that information, then you'll end up in something like this. But typically my next step here is, once I identify the higher performing campaigns, I would, then take the campaigns and then start to look at those in detail, look at the emails, understand how those emails performed. A good example then would be to jump in, let's grab something quickly. Yeah, here's one. I mean, this is from 2018 March, but my date range was 2019, the year of 2019. So it just simply means that somebody has interacted with an asset from that period within the 2019 timeframe. So I can start to drill in and get some detail, like so. All right. Does anybody have any questions on any of that information that's been shared there? Once you get down to the detail of understanding the campaigns in question, that's when you possibly want to start looking at doing some email analysis to really get in and understand what those emails are doing and how they're performing. You know, where are people clicking on your information? And so this again is just using one of the dashboards within the platform, which is called email performance, and then using the third tab, which is the click map. So now you can actually start to get a better feeling for how those individual assets are performing. This is a fairly new email. We only started using this email in January this year. So I thought I'd just jump in and show this one and have a close look. So you can see all of the activity is really happening at the top here, which is fine because that's primarily what the email is all about. It's really about asking them to confirm and update their details and to help them understand any events, etc., that are coming up. One easy way to start to get some analysis. All right. Hopefully that helped you understand a little bit more about Insight. Keeping in mind, the great thing with Insight is you can't break anything, right? So just get in there and have some fun, especially if you don't have an analyzer license, or even if you do, you can't break anything. So just get in there, apply some filters, look at information, move information around, etc. You can't break any of the masters, as I said, so just get in there and start to have a little look. If you've got any questions, please let us know. If you wanted to look at dashboards in Insight, again, my suggestion would be have a think about how you want that information to look, what it should look like, what you want it to be able to filter on, all that sort of fun stuff, and then have a chat with the Marketing Cube support team, or Jason is certainly able to assist you with getting some time put aside to help you with that as well. All right, so here, what I've done is just tried to identify a range of different apps that you may or may not be familiar with. The WeChat app has had a ton of updates occur over the last 12, 18 months, and that particular app is proving to be reasonably popular for anyone working within the mainland China market. So that's a very helpful one. The Add This for Oracle, this is a free app. What it does, it provides all the social sharing capability that you'll see. And you'll see that on any of our pages, both on our CMS, on our website, but also on our Eloqua landing pages. So Add This enables people to take your content and share your content within their social channels. That's a great app. I encourage you to look at that. If you're running Salesforce CRM, the salesforce.com Campaign Association app is really helpful from a time-saving point of view. What that enables you to do is, from the campaign canvas, actually associate a person and their campaign member status based on certain behavior from the campaign canvas. So registered for an event is a really good example. There's a whole range of applications or applications for that app that make it really helpful for Salesforce and Eloqua users together. The Oracle Date app. This one is added to the campaign canvas. And again, what this one enables you to do is to interrogate data in a date field. So not a text field that might have a date written into it, but an actual date field that has a real date. It could be contract expiry. It could be when someone's renewal is coming up for a service or product that you're providing them. And so the Oracle Date app enables you to play with that information and adjust messaging based on a particular date, or to even exclude someone is maybe another way to look at it if a date has passed, so information is no longer relevant to them, for instance. Litmus, many of you will be familiar with Litmus. You can add the Litmus app to Eloqua. That means then from within the actual email editor itself, you can trigger the email being sent off to Litmus without having to leave Eloqua to go to Litmus. And all of that can happen directly within the email design or either of the email editors. You do need to have, I believe it's referred to as a Litmus Enterprise license agreement. It doesn't work on their lower products, which is kind of annoying. But if you are an enterprise client with Litmus, then you can add that. It's free, and it just simply means you don't have to leave Eloqua to go and use Litmus, which is kind of helpful. Contact washing machine. I think we talk about this one nearly every user group. It's just an absolute gem. It does a whole range of things to help you clean data. At the most basic level, we're taking first names, making sure they're proper case, they're not lowercase or all in uppercase, for instance. But yeah, adjusting that information and presenting it in a way that's more digestible is a good thing. Now below there, those two at the bottom, they're really more for the sales team. But this is really giving the sales team access to data. It enhances LinkedIn Sales Navigator for Oracle. That one really enhances the experience from a profiler point of view. Then if you're using Microsoft Outlook, that one enables you to bring, and there's another one actually I should have included, that has profiler and engage functionality directly in Outlook for the salesperson. So the salesperson doesn't have to leave Outlook. They can remain in Outlook and still access that information. There is another one that is a Google Chrome extension specifically. Again, this is for the sales team, really. This is just a screen example I've got here for you. So we've got the, you can see I've got the app loaded right there. That's the little Oracle logo sitting in the back there with my other millions of apps. But it takes essentially oracle.com, the domain in the URL, and then matches it against your contacts sitting in Eloqua, and then tells the browser user, obviously it's a member of your staff, how many contacts that you have at oracle.com. So you can see we have 195 people sitting in our instance of Eloqua who have an email address with oracle.com. Now you can click on any of those, and if you click on them, you'll then start to see information that looks a bit more like Profiler. So if you're familiar with Profiler and how it works, and you can scroll down there, obviously, and you can get the detail that you might be looking for. Okay, so how do you get that app though, right? So logic would suggest to you that you might go to the Oracle Cloud Marketplace. No, you don't. The other option, you think you might go to the Chrome Marketplace to find the app. No, you don't. What you do is you go to the Eloqua Help Center. If you come to the Eloqua Help Center, if you simply do a keyword search on Chrome, there aren't many things that come up, but what does come up is the Oracle Eloqua Sales Tools for Google Chrome. Now, in order to use those, obviously your company needs to have purchased licenses for the use of Profiler and Engage. Jason can assist you with any inquiries that you might have there, but anyone who has a license can then access it. They'll actually log in for the first time. Once they've logged in though, they don't need to log in again and again. So that's a helpful tool. Now we are running out of time here. The other part that we wanted to share here was just looking at some time-saving techniques more generally. And so my general direction here for people is to look at identifying repetitious processes and then trying to work out, can we automate those? And sometimes these can happen outside the realm of marketing. I promised to share some client experiences. So we have one client who has to deliver significant numbers of hardware into clients' buildings. And so that process can become quite complicated with the need for IP addresses, occupational health and safety, how many stairs are there doors, are there elevators, all those sorts of things. And that was a fairly cumbersome process for them. What they did is actually took that entire process and used it in conjunction with their CRM and Eloqua to deliver emails to invite people to fill in forms to give the information that they needed. And then it was all consolidated. That information was captured in Eloqua, then taken through to the CRM into the service request area of the CRM for the call center team and the service team to then be able to act on that particular information. So you could argue that's not even a marketing function, but what we're doing there is really just looking at trying to automate and streamline a process that was a little bit clunky and trying to make it a little bit better. One of the classic ways to save time is certainly with the Contact Us form. We've just done a little bit of beefing up of our own Contact Us form actually now. So based on the type of request that you submit, we'll then determine the type of email confirmation that you get. And in that email are various links to other pieces of information that might help you further based on your inquiry. So taking that information, that's the CX side of things. But taking that information then and making sure we get that into the CRM and then working out where should it go in the CRM. Should it be going as a lead for the sales team or should it potentially be going off to the service team? And so we can easily control that experience using the form processing steps and your integration and probably just through querying specific types of inquiries. So if people ask more service-related questions from a drop-down menu, then we can route them off to service. But if somebody says, I want to buy, 200 units of whatever, well, we can make sure that gets routed off to the sales team. So that can be a time-saving process, but also from a CX point of view, it's faster and it's more consistent and less chance of those things getting lost in form submissions elsewhere. Administration communications, anything like public holiday notifications, those sorts of things, there's no reason those can't really be built probably at the quiet time at the start of the year, which we've now just passed. Most of us are back on deck and probably starting to get pretty busy. Notifications, so based on form submission, so if people are submitting forms, and as long as we have the right information sitting in the system from an integration point of view, we can send notifications directly to a CRM account or contact owner. So we don't need to have notifications going to everybody or just to one person who then has to forward them to everybody. We can actually use the automation in the system to deliver that experience. And then also automating insight reports. We didn't really cover that, but that essentially in Insight, that's referred to as an agent. So you'll see one of those 6 videos that I showed you earlier on our Insight page. There's one there that's referred to as an agent. Now, if you're not overly familiar with Insight, you're like, well, what on earth is an agent? Okay, an agent essentially is a process that you set up that means that a particular report can be extracted every Monday and sent to these particular people automated or in an automated fashion. So that's what that is essentially. All right, let's move through to the fun stuff. Or the more fun stuff. All right, so 28, due February. When is it due? Coming to a pod near you on Valentine's Day for pods 1 and 2, pod 7, which is the other Australian pod, on Saturday the 15th, which will in fact be actually AET. I've just noticed the first time they've added AET after that. So Australian Eastern Time, which is not quite correct. It really should be Australian Eastern Daylight Time, AEDT. But anyway, I think that must be local time, which is good because it is in Australia. So it makes sense that they would give us the Australian time zone. But for many of our clients, you're either on pod 1, pod 7 typically. So all happening is pretty much in the middle of the month. And just to reiterate, if you're wondering where on earth your pod data is stored, there's all the pod numbers and the location. So you can see pod 7 is in Sydney. Okay, now a reminder in relation to forms. So the critical thing to know with the classic form editor is that as of the middle of next month, so let's just say Valentine's Day, you will not be able to create new forms in the classic editor. You'll be pretty much able to do everything else. All your existing forms, you'll still be able to adjust. if you're wondering what it is in a bit more detail, I did find this little table, which is quite helpful. So if we go all the way back to release 19B, you can see the different functions, but here we are in 20A. So from a 20A point of view, you'll be able to edit the classic form design, but that is the fields on the front of the form, and you'll be able to edit and save processing steps, but that's it, okay? You won't be able to take an old classic form and do a save as to create a new form. So if you do have any of those that you feel you're going to need to do it now before the 14th of February. Okay. Any questions on that at all? Okay. This is probably the most exciting news, certainly for those of us that spend a lot of time sitting in Insight, but it's hasta la vista, Adobe Flash. So the dinosaur is gone. It's onto HTML5, and that annoying error that you see sometimes when you're running a report where you configure it and then it says, oh no, sorry, you need to give permission for Flash to run, that will disappear. Now there's more information coming to you through an important update for those who subscribe to our important updates, which will give a little bit more information on that, but that's just great news all around for everybody. Some other exciting news is, you may recall, it would have been nearly 12 months ago when we got back from the global conference in Las Vegas. They talked about this account engagement dashboard and being able to visualize marketing metrics at an account level rather than down at lead, channel, or product sort of level. So we have a mock-up of what that looks like, and this is it here, for instance. So what we're looking at is a similar functionality around date ranges, for instance, and then these are the names of the various accounts. Now that's all I've got at this stage. I can't even scroll down on that because this is the mock-up that's been included. We won't see that until the middle of February, but that's going to be really interesting to understand in a lot more detail what that means, potentially being able to identify your more engaged accounts. Certainly from the point of view of account-based marketing and understanding what's going on there, this will be a great tool to help you get a little bit more additional insight around their behavior, their engagement, or their lack of engagement. So good news for that. Then some people had asked some time ago about the ability to export HTML from the new editors. So that will be available, but in controlled availability. So if you feel you have a need to want to be able to export email, HTML, responsive emails, then you'll need to log a service request with Oracle in order to do that. If you need a hand, please reach out to Marketing Cube support and we can certainly do that on your behalf. And then the Operations Center, probably something most interesting for administrators in our audience today, not so much for everybody else, but from an integration point of view, understanding what's happening there, system issues, those sorts of things, then the changes to the Operations Center are both visual but also quite functional as well. Then if you're using the Facebook Lead Ads app and have ever felt a little bit constricted with some of those options, then there are changes there coming in the middle of February. So support for questionnaires, multi-page forms, and more. And DataFox integration. So DataFox is probably a little bit more US-centric. I'd be curious to understand if there's anyone in Australia using DataFox, but it's often used from an account-based marketing point of view. It helps beef up data quality, is my understanding. It's also under controlled availability, but it does also require a subscription to DataFox. It's a paid-for service. Then some of you may have noticed that the recently accessed by me and recently modified options for emails, landing pages, and forms disappeared in the middle of December. Well, they've been restored. So along with us and a few other people who might have expressed some displeasure at that, they've been restored. So that's great news. And that's a wrap. I certainly appreciate you making some time to be with us today. Hopefully the information that we've shared has been helpful. We'll start working on slicing and dicing the replay so that we can get that posted for you as soon as possible. But you'll find that information on our blog, and we'll shoot you an email to let you know when that's ready to be accessed. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great start to the year, and we look forward to chatting with you over the coming weeks and months. Thanks very much, everybody. Bye-bye.